On a busy Halloween afternoon in 1989, 30-year-old Sylvia Salinas was murdered while working at her convenience store in Galveston, Texas. Despite the ample amount of blood evidence, her killer remains unknown for over 30 years. Sylvia Salinas was born on January 7, 1959, in Galveston, Texas. Her parents, Derlis and Maria, raised their 4 children to celebrate their Mexican heritage in a Spanish-speaking home. The devout Catholic family attended Mass every Sunday and often prayed the rosary together before bedtime. In the late 1970s, Sylvia became the owner of her own grocery store, which she named Salinas Food Store, and operated in the same neighborhood where she grew up. Sylvia was a popular figure in her neighborhood, known for being friendly and making her grocery store a welcoming place. She was always kind and generous, often giving store credit to customers until they could pay. Because of her caring nature, Sylvia was affectionately known around Galveston as Auntie Syl or Tia Syl in Spanish. Sylvia was also extremely diligent and aware of her surroundings, especially during the time she frequently spent alone in the store. She kept a loaded revolver under the cashier counter for her protection and was extra diligent while working alone overnight. According to her friend and roommate Cynthia, Sylvia was very street smart. She had an ability to sense danger and could tell when people who came into her store were a threat to her. On the morning of Tuesday, October 31st, 1989, which was Halloween night, the day was Halloween, Sylvia Salinas was working at her grocery store on the corner of 31st Street and Avenue Q in Galveston. Her parents, Derlis and Maria, had stopped by to visit and help with some tasks around the store. Later that afternoon, Derlis and Maria left the store to walk the 2 blocks back to their home for some lunch. This was the last time they saw their daughter alive. At 1:22 p.m., a private alarm company received an alert that a robbery was in progress at the Salinas food store on the 31st Street and Avenue Q. The alarm was dispatched to the Galveston Police Department at 1:23 p.m. 4 minutes after receiving the report, police had already arrived and found a bloody crime scene. When the police went into the store, they discovered Sylvia Salinas behind the counter, hunched over in a pool of blood, and she seemed to be in a calm position. She had been stabbed in the chest with a large kitchen knife, which was lying on the counter beside her. Sylvia's machete and loaded revolver were underneath the counter without any signs of disturbance. Given the way her body was positioned and the absence of any evident self-defense injuries, it appeared as if Sylvia was taken by surprise during the attack. On the counter, just inches from where Sylvia sat, was a blood-splattered cash register. The drawer of the register had been forced open and emptied of all bills, leaving behind coin change and food stamps. The drawer had significant blood smears, leading investigators to speculate that it had been pried open with the same knife that was used to stab Sylvia. When the cash register drawer was forcibly opened during the robbery, an unseen alarm had been silently triggered to alert the alarm company of the broken register. Based on the timing of this alert, investigators established an estimated time of death to be around 1:20 p.m. Over 400 people attended Sylvia's funeral at Mission Reina de la Paz on November 3, 1989. The Mass was said in both English and Spanish and conducted at Sylvia's childhood church. Sylvia's murder remained unsolved, and the case soon grew cold. An autopsy confirmed that there were no defensive wounds on Sylvia's body, and she was likely surprised by the attack. Investigators theorized that the assailant knew Sylvia and the comings and goings of the Salinas food store. Considering the murder was committed in the afternoon in broad daylight on Halloween, a popular and busy day in Galveston, they remained unsure whether the knife used in the stabbing had been brought in by the attacker or whether it was in the store. Salinas food store did not operate a butcher department, and Sylvia's parents did not recognize the knife from their daughter's store. About 10 minutes before the murder and robbery, an unidentified black man in dark clothing was seen outside the Salinas food store. using the payphone. Investigators wondered if this man witnessed the assailant entering the store, but the man was never identified. In a nearby alley less than a block away from the store, another unidentified man was seen running down the sidewalk around the same time of the murder. This man was described as a white man with sandy blonde hair. Police remain unsure if either of these men had anything to do with Sylvia's murder, and no other witnesses came forward. In the years following the murder, law enforcement interviewed and cleared over 20 individuals in connection with Sylvia's murder. In September of 2008, Galveston was hit by Category 4 storm Hurricane Ike. The Galveston police station was damaged by flooding, ruining several files and evidence for multiple cases. When first responders arrived at Salinas' food store, footage of the crime scene was taped during a walkthrough, and that VHS videotape was stored in evidence at the police station that was flooded. Thankfully, this VHS tape was preserved during Hurricane Ike, along with some bloody prints found at the scene of the crime. While these prints may contain a match, the VHS footage remains the most significant piece of evidence in the case, as it provides an in-depth look at the crime scene and the people in the crowd outside of the store. In March 2020, the Galveston Police Department told ABC 13 Galveston that Sylvia's case was being reviewed by detectives after decades of being a cold file. The bloody prints found at the crime scene were being resubmitted to the crime lab for testing. There have been no updates on the results of these tests, and Sylvia's murder remains unsolved till this day. So we have a unsolved murder case from 1989 in Texas on a Halloween night. What are your first thoughts about this one?
This one seems pretty more straightforward than the previous ones that we talked about, because there was robbery and murder. So I don't know, in my head I initially thought it was just a robbery gone wrong.
Yeah, I'm even trying to remember what are the last ones that we talked about recently. I know we talked about
Aaron, who disappeared in Vienna.
Yeah.
The two girls.
Oh, that's right. Patricia and Patty.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Halloween disappearance. That's true.
Yeah, they just disappeared without a trace.
Exactly, yeah. So I was actually looking at these cases to talk about today. I was trying to pick some cases that there's not that much information that seem kind of straightforward, but they're not really that straightforward. I have some kind of theories here. And the first thing I would like to ask, do you think that the killer was somebody that Sylvia knew? Because remember, police said that Sylvia was found in a peaceful position, meaning that she wasn't, they didn't really find any defensive wounds on her. Also her revolver, and I believe she also had a machete, like a machete, that big knife, under the
Was she
counter?
stabbed in the back or on the chest?
In the chest.
Oh.
It's almost like someone walked up and just stabbed her straight in the
Definitely
chest.
someone she knew then. Or someone she was familiar with. Because if it's stabbed on the back, it would have been easy. She did not know that person. It was a stranger who just walked up there and stabbed her.
But I think since it was sometime in the afternoon, it wasn't even that late yet, I kind of think that it doesn't necessarily need to be someone that she known. It could be just a person who didn't make her feel threatened. Almost like some teenager.
Maybe some stranger who appeared like just gonna ask her a question.
Yeah. What do you think is the motive for this crime? Because, looking at the crime scene, seems like it's a robbery.
Yeah.
Just as simple as that. Do you think there's a robbery, or do you think there's something more happening in this murder?
I just think it's a robbery gone wrong.
Okay.
What do you think?
I mean, it's pretty bizarre to me that the robbery happened in broad daylight. And I've looked at the place where this store would be located, and it's actually in a fairly densely populated neighborhood. There's homes and cars.
By the corner.
Yeah, by the corner. It's like the corner store of the neighborhood. there's a lot of people there, and I was kind of wondering why commit this robbery and murder in broad daylight, not even picking an evening, and also on Halloween day, which is, probably busier. People are out more than a regular day.
Desperation? Maybe someone badly needed food, or someone badly needed to buy, alcohol or drugs for their party or something.
And they would commit a murder for some booze?
Probably drugs.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe drugs, but to me it also seems weird. And then also I would think that maybe the killer would use a car to get away from the crime, or maybe they would park a car somewhere like on the corner of like another street, like across an alleyway, so, yeah. And then take the car. Maybe it's not the best idea to park the car right in front of the store.
Yeah.
Maybe they had a car parked somewhere, a few kind of blocks away.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it was planned, or was it coincidental? What I meant is that, do you think they specifically targeted that certain food store, or they were just picking it random?
That's actually a very good question, because I can't really make out if the killer or killers are actually expert criminals, mm-hmm. or are they just random people who got really lucky? Because police was there in 5 minutes almost, mm-hmm. It seems like. So they were able to open up the cash register,
yeah,
with the machete, or
mm-hmm.
with the kitchen knife, sorry, and take the money and leave within 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's pretty bizarre.
That's pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. How about the knife? Since the knife was unfamiliar, do you think it belonged to the criminal or criminals?
Oh, that's a good question. I have no idea.
Interesting, right?
It's really interesting. Do you think that unidentified black man was any way connected to the case? This is the same man that was using the payphone, was seen using a payphone right next to the store, mm-hmm. 10 minutes before the murder. So I have no idea whether or not he was actually at the payphone, mm-hmm. like as the crime was happening, because we only have the information that he was there like 10 minutes leading up to the murder.
How come he never stepped in?
Yeah.
If he was innocent.
Or came forward.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure they tried to get a hold of this guy.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
So you think this black man is connected to the case?
Possibly. Mainly because he never stepped in or came forward.
And who saw him?
Exactly, who saw him?
Who saw him, right?
What was that report about? Who reported it?
I don't know, I have no idea. Maybe Sylvia's parents saw him? Because let's remember, Sylvia's parents were in the store helping Sylvia, mm-hmm. and then they left. And right after they left, kind of soon they were Sylvia was murdered. Do you think there's a chance that
the guy was waiting for them to leave?
Or not necessarily for them to leave, but the parents saw him?
Possibly, yeah.
Because who else would mm-hmm. remember that?
Now thinking about it, since, as you mentioned, the parents were there just minutes before the attack happened, seems pretty planned, no? At least someone was looking out until she was left all alone in that store.
Yeah, from the information online that I was able to find, I think law enforcement even put out this theory that this person would have been familiar with the store's movements, mm-hmm. like ins and outs, when is the best time to go in and to commit this crime. So, what was your question again? Sorry, I forgot.
I forgot as well.
Okay, never mind.
Let's just skip it for now.
The other question I have, do you think that white man with sandy blonde hair is somehow connected?
Who was he again?
He was a man who was seen running in a nearby alley less than a block away around the same time of a murder. So I'm immediately thinking, why is he running?
Was he probably exercising, or?
I don't think so, because they would have emphasized.
Mm-hmm.
But this white man, just a few kind of blocks away, was running.
Who saw him?
Once again, I don't know who saw him, but it seemed like this is a neighborhood, like fairly populated neighborhood, so
Yeah.
I could kind of see how someone would remember seeing them. Yeah, once again, another shady connection. We have an unidentified black man at the payphone. We have a white man with blonde hair running also. For
Do you think
some
they're
reason.
somehow connected, the two of them?
The two of them are connected. I mean, I don't know. Do you think they're connected?
I'm not sure as well.
Okay, I was looking at Reddit and someone put out an interesting theory that maybe the murder was actually the goal and taking the cash was just a red herring. Do you know what I'm trying to say? That someone wanted to kill Sylvia specifically, took the money as just to kind of make it seem as if it was a robbery gone wrong or something like that. What do you think about that theory? That this was actually planned killing and the money was just a red herring?
Interesting. Definitely interesting. Did she have any record of, I don't know, bad blood with someone? Fights?
Well, that's the thing. From the information online, apparently everyone loved her. She was even called Tia Syl, as in Uncle Tia, or Aunt Tia. Aunt Syl, sorry.
Yeah. So everybody loved her, so it's really interesting that someone had enough anger to murder her on one Halloween afternoon.
Yeah, I think it's very strange. I was kind of trying to sum up my thoughts about this case, and to me, it seemed to me like the killer approached Sylvia calmly and then stabbed her suddenly, and then took the money and then ran away. And I'm thinking perhaps the time of day when the murder was committed indicates that this culprit is not an experienced criminal, and it's just a would-be criminal who just got lucky getting away with a crime in broad daylight. I don't know why would they commit a crime in broad daylight otherwise.
Yeah.
Maybe the VHS tape that law enforcement is now claiming that they have, and it has survived Hurricane Ike, can provide some more information. Apparently they had a crowd of people. You know, when there's a murder scene, there's always going to be a crowd of people. So they have videotaped who was in the crowd. But I'm not sure what kind of information they could gain from that, because I mean, the original investigators back in '89 also had this information. It's not like they didn't have it and they just found it.
Maybe they were thinking the killer was in that crowd.
Yeah,
watching.
Potentially. But what I'm saying, do you think that, I don't know, this VHS tape is now gonna help solve this case in any way?
I don't think so.
I don't see how it's gonna do it. The blood print from '89 is being submitted in DNA databases. So at this point, the murder happened 34 years ago. And I'm thinking, how likely is it that this killer who killed Sylvia did not commit any more crimes and did not kill more people since then? Do you think the same person who killed Sylvia, do you think there is a chance that this person killed more people in the last 34 years? Or at least committed more crimes where his fingerprints would be, I don't know, entered into some sort of a law enforcement fingerprint database?
That's a very good question. I don't know.
Because for me, I'm kind of building the picture in my head, at least from all the information that we have, is that this could have been a teenager who just wanted to get some money, who went in there. Maybe he was pressured by friends or something to buy some booze for Halloween, killed Sylvia, took the money, ran away, was maybe so shocked by what they had just did, and decided to never commit crimes ever again.
Possibly, unless there are other reports of robbery within the same area.
I don't know about that. I don't have this info.
Yeah, but what you said kind of had a point, mainly because the way the whole crime was played out was clumsy.
Yeah, right? I mean, clumsy, but in what way clumsy? Well, in the way that they left a lot of fingerprints.
I mean, the choice of weapon, immediately clumsy. Second one, trying to pry open the cashier and the register with the same weapon, also clumsy. And they did not know that it could trigger a silent alarm.
Yeah, that is true. But they did get away from law enforcement that responded apparently really quickly. So that's also something to think about. Was this a very kind of successful plot? But then again, I don't think if any like really serious criminals would plan out a
In broad
robbery
daylight.
in broad daylight just to get like, I don't know how much money they could have gotten.
Probably not thousands.
I would say maybe up to $1,000. I mean, how much could that little food store?
Like 500?
Yeah, something like that. So I really think that this could be a potential where the culprit is a
Inexperienced
inexperienced
killer.
killer who may have never committed crimes ever again.
Just
Maybe
got away with it.
got away. Maybe lived in Galveston.
Just probably within the same neighborhood.
Potentially.
Who
Now
knows?
is just a regular civilian and is gonna take this to the grave unless law enforcement will be able to find this person. Otherwise, I think, or this person could be already a victim of other kinds of crimes, because criminals fight other criminals. Maybe he already is dead. Criminals have a way of like also dying. It's a
Yeah.
pretty dangerous occupation, especially for murderers. I don't think you're gonna live a long life if you're gonna put yourself in danger
That's true.
all the time, and if you're really reckless. So it's interesting. I do wonder, who could this person be? 34 years later, we have no idea. This person could well still be living there, in that
That's
neighborhood.
Just one of us
Yeah,
walking around.
walking around. Okay, so since we're still trying to extend that whole Halloween theme for a while, we have another Halloween murder case that we want to talk on this podcast. This case happened on the night of October 30th in 1982, so 7 years prior to Sylvia's case. Depew High School senior James Adamski, who was 18, had departed his home in Cheektowaga, New York State, wearing an American Gigolo costume. James attended a Halloween Eve party at a bar on the corner of Transit Road and Walden Avenue in nearby Depew, with the bar promoting a pay once, drink all night event. Okay, do you know what the American Gigolo costume is?
Is it one of those costumes that kind of looks like a Native American?
No, American Gigolo is a movie.
Oh,
With-
jeez. I
with-
thought it was like a Native American outfit.
No, a gigolo is a male prostitute. So American Gigolo is a movie from 1980, starring Richard Gere. You know who that guy is, right? Richard Gere. And basically, I don't really know what the American Gigolo costume could look like, but Richard Gere in that movie is seen wearing like these kind of fancy suits, fancy stuffs. So I'm thinking he's wearing that fancy suit.
Like a mafia guy.
Kind of like a mafia guy, like a rich man's fancy suit. So just kind of painting the picture here how James Adamski probably looked like on the day when he was murdered. At the time, the legal age of drinking was 18 in New York State, which allowed James to attend this party. Before he left the party, James's younger brother, Andy, remembers James giving him a kiss on his forehead and saying, "Have a good time trick-or-treating, kid." Immediately, I have to stop here and ask, how is Andy then attending this bar party? If Andy is James's younger brother and James is 18, and you have to be 18 to enter the bar. Just a weird detail. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Not really. I was under the impression that James would go to the party while Andy would go treat or treating.
Oh, so you don't think...
I don't think they went to the bar together. I think Andy went to do his own thing, and James went to go to a party.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Makes more sense than what I'm thinking about, actually. Now, after that, this was the last time Andy saw his older brother. James left the bar in the early morning hours on Halloween Day to make the 2-mile walk back to his house. Other sources state that it was 4-mile walk, so from the bar, walking back home.
Mm-hmm.
Along the way, he walked with a girl who he soon parted ways with. James Adamski was last seen walking alone on Transit Road at approximately 3:30 a.m. in the night. Many friends of James recall seeing him at the bar. They said that he was heavily intoxicated, and at some point he got into an altercation with some other partygoers, but it was settled before things got physical.
Mm-hmm.
So probably just a verbal altercation. When James failed to make it home the next morning, police were notified, and a large search by Lancaster Town police and volunteer firefighters commenced for weeks on end with no luck. After 2 months of searching, on December 26, 1982, James's body was discovered by rabbit hunters in a wooded area about 4 miles from where he was last seen alive. Still in his Halloween costume, his body was in a makeshift shallow grave and appeared to have been purposely covered by twigs and leaves. Police say he was bludgeoned to death, with several serious blows to the forehead. The medical examiner suspects that the murder weapon was possibly a baseball bat, a 2x4 plank of wood, or a tire iron. Some of the twigs were analyzed in a laboratory, but no fingerprints could be found. Police had interviewed the girl that James was walking with, but after questioning, she was cleared as a suspect. Hundreds of more leads were followed, and police learned that there was an argument earlier in the night at that bar, and that James and others were considerably inebriated at that point. Though the information police received never led to any arrests, and many of the leads simply went cold over the years. Beyond that argument that occurred, police believe it is unlikely it would have led to violence and murder. So police don't really think that argument that James had in the bar somehow contributed to his death. Police believe that James was possibly picked up as he headed home, still very intoxicated, by either a stranger or somebody that he had known. And it is possible that he either willingly got into that vehicle or he was forced into the vehicle. After getting in, it is believed that James possibly got into an altercation with the driver or multiple passengers. Or they already had intentions to harm James. James was then beaten to death, and his killers drove his body to where it was found and buried in a shallow grave. The puzzling component of this case is how James Adamski, by all accounts, was a friendly and good-natured young man. Friends and acquaintances spoke very highly of him, and there is little reason to believe he made very many enemies during his lifetime. In 2017, Lancaster police increased reward money to $11,000, but there have only been 2 leads since that time. Both leads were inconclusive. James's brother Andy stated that the murder caused a lot of pain in his family. He says his mother was never the same afterwards, always terrified that the person who killed James would kill Andy too. Both of James's parents passed away in the 2000s without ever knowing who killed their son. Police believe that James's murder will only be solved if someone who knows something about the murder will come forward.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about James Adamski's murder?
It could possibly be the people he had an altercation with at the bar, or was thinking it could be a mugging scenario, you know what I mean?
A mugging? Yeah.
Because he was walking around wearing a fancy suit, let's say, around 3 a.m. intoxicated in New York.
It's not New York City, it's New York State, and it's actually on the other side of New York State. It's close to Buffalo. Mm-hmm. So
it would be less dangerous.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about less dangerous, but it's definitely not New York City.
Okay.
Let's get this straight. It's like way. It's like close to Canada. It's like right next to Canadian border. I would
Pretty
say.
rural then.
It's not super rural because it's close to Buffalo, but I would kind of say it's like the outskirts of Buffalo. There's still a lot of homes, still a lot of things happening, but maybe like not as many as a real like big hustle and bustle city. So it's not that.
So what do you think about the mugging?
I think it's a possibility, especially given the fact that he was wearing an American Gigolo costume, which from what I can make out is probably a fancy suit.
Would make you look like a businessman, a successful one.
Yeah, a successful man, you know? Hey, I have a few questions and theories, and I would like to get your take on it. My first question is, do you think that James would have tried to hitchhike? Or do you think that if he was picked up, he was kind of abducted? Because he lived, let's say, 4 miles away.
Oh, well then yeah, he definitely got into a car. One way or another.
Yeah, but don't you think like 4 miles for an 18-year-old guy is definitely doable to walk?
Yeah, but at the same time, if there were some cars passing by, it would have been easier to just hitchhike.
Yes, but he was really drunk. So, and maybe someone picked him up because maybe they thought that James was...
Or the muggers picked him up and threw his body out.
Yeah, potentially. So, do you think that altercation at the bar is anyway connected to the murders? Because I have no idea how serious was this altercation and how many people were involved. Police don't really put much weight into it.
So those people were never interviewed?
I think they were maybe interviewed, but I don't think that police necessarily invested a lot of resource into that line of thinking.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to say because the information is quite restricted, no?
Yeah. Do you think that the people that James had an altercation with in the bar wanted to beat him up and they caught up with him and took it too far? Do you think that that's a possibility, that maybe they got into a car, picked him up, maybe tried to rough him up a little bit, but they were also drunk, and then maybe they just took it too far and proceeded to kill him?
Yeah, possibly, because the way his body was found in the forest, there was a shallow grave and he was covered in twigs and branches.
Yeah.
So whoever killed him was not a seasoned killer, I guess. Not a hitman.
Also, let's remember that he was... I think the cause of death was that he was bludgeoned to death. And the first murder weapon that was theorized by police is a baseball bat. So I'm thinking, is it likely that the persons who, potentially attacked James hit him in the head with a baseball bat and killed him?
I think so.
But maybe they didn't want to kill him. Maybe they were thinking, I'm just gonna knock you out with a baseball bat.
Steal from you?
Or just like rough him up for whatever reason. But then they thought that he was dead, or like the damage to his head was so severe that they just decided to finish the job and kill him. Do you think that there's a chance that they didn't necessarily wanted to kill James? They wanted to just beat him up.
Yeah, possibly.
But then it went too far.
Yeah.
Because maybe they were drunk and someone just hit him with something hard, and then maybe the damage to his head was so severe that they just, I don't know, put him in a shallow grave.
Yeah, but could probably be one of those people at the bar. Young people just beefing with each other.
Yeah.
Took it too far.
Potentially, if there were multiple culprits involved, then that would mean that none of them would have to speak out for over 40 years.
I don't think it's just one person, though. It's really hard to lift a heavy body.
Yeah, I think so.
And bury it. No matter how shallow the grave is, it's pretty hard to do it by one person.
Exactly. So these people who are responsible, they stayed silent for 40 years. No one had any conscience,
Yeah.
Do you think that the girl is somehow connected to this crime? Maybe someone at the bar was jealous that James was walking with this particular girl, and they kind of got really upset and went after James.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to say because once again, there is so little information about this, about the girl, and maybe she has that connection to the bar. We don't know.
Yeah. So to summarize my thoughts about the case, it seems like to me that James was definitely picked up by someone because his body was found in a field 4 miles away. I don't think he got there himself. I'm not confident that that bar altercation is not connected to his murder. James and the other partygoers were most likely very drunk and may have escalated the conflict outside of the bar. I think it's a possibility that there was a escalation.
Yeah, where was the place where he was last seen? Like how much distance was it from the bar?
I don't know the distance, I just know the road. We just know that it was on this one particular road in the area that is still connected to the bar. So I don't think he walked away far. Like he was on the same road that that bar is on. It's a long road though, but he wasn't that far away.
Okay. So yeah, possibly someone followed him.
Followed him.
Roughen him.
Maybe hit him with a bat, but the damage was too severe.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to hide his body. Yeah, sounds pretty bizarre. Like a bizarre Halloween murder, and very unfortunate.
Very unfortunate indeed.
Another case, we have the unsolved murder of a British man, Derek Grain, a 39-year-old British man who had been in Bristol City just 2 months, and he was brutally killed on Halloween Eve in 1980. His savage murder remains unsolved until this day. It's been over 40 years, and we have no more information. Well, we don't know who killed Derek Grain. Derek was a kind and polite man from Hertfordshire. He grew up in a small town called Hitchin. Derek was described as somewhat of a loner, but nonetheless cheerful and a kind man. He was on temporary transfer at British Aerospace in Flinton, a suburb of Bristol in southwest England. I think he was working on planes. Something to do with aviation. On the evening prior to Halloween, in the year of 1980, Derek had been drinking at Vicky's and Curve's nightclubs, both situated on Park Street in Bristol, about a 10-minute walk away from the Unicorn Hotel where he was staying for the last 2 months, because let's remember he had just recently relocated to Bristol. He appeared to have been spending quite a lot of cash that Halloween Eve evening. So it's not on Halloween night, it's one day prior to Halloween. I think it was on the 30th. He was paying for each drink with a fresh £1 note. Due to inflation reasons, back in 1980, £1 could actually get you way more stuff than now, for obvious reasons, which may have attracted some unwanted attention. Police suspect that maybe him flaunting the money around in that bar potentially attracted some unwanted attention. At around 2 a.m. that night, Derek left Curve's nightclub alone. And rather than heading down Park Street, which would be the most direct route back to his hotel, the Unicorn Hotel in Park Street, Derek instead headed in the opposite direction, up Park Street, towards Brandon Hill, home of Cabot Tower, and a popular picnic spot. It's like a park, essentially. It has never been determined why exactly he went this way. And I had prepared the map here, as you can see. And you can see I kind of lined out. You could probably see Park Street in the middle, and there's 2 arrows, right? So he was supposed to kind of head more in the southern direction to get to his hotel, which is here. But instead he went into this park area. It's a very pretty park, I'm not gonna lie. I took a look. This park in Bristol is very nice. The next morning, a local nurse, 24-year-old Sally Isaac, was on her way to her shift at St. Mary's Hospital when she made a grim discovery on Brandon Hill in that same park. She found Derek lying face down in a pool of his own blood. His jacket had been torn off, his bank cards were scattered around his body, and police believe that around 50 to 60 pounds in cash had been taken, suggesting that the murder was a robbery gone wrong. It was, however, a particularly brutal attack because Derek had catastrophic head injuries and a bloody footprint was found on his back. He appeared to have been kicked in the head as he laid on the ground. The murder weapon was a heavily blood-stained, sand-filled traffic cone found 80 yards, which is around 73 meters, from his body. So it seems that whoever killed him used a traffic cone to kill him. Given the violent nature of the attack, police believe that the attacker or attackers would have had heavy blood splatter on their clothing following the incident. The nearby Park Street and Clifton Triangle areas, which are full of bars and therefore popular nightlife destinations, would likely have been reasonably busy even at that time of night, due to it being Halloween Eve and all. However, despite these factors, no witnesses report that seeing anybody covered in blood around that area at that time of the night. An anonymous caller would later contact police, revealing he had seen a mysterious red Jaguar, which is a car, in the area, and 3 or 4 men attacking someone at around 3 a.m. near Clifton Triangle, not far from where Derek was found. Clifton Triangle is this kind of street, let's call it. The fight was confirmed by other witnesses. However, it is unknown if this was related to Derek's death, as fights are pretty common in that part of town, particularly at this time when clubs are closing. Furthermore, if Derek was the victim of this assault that happened at around 3 a.m. near Clifton Triangle, it would mean that he would have been hanging around the area for a full hour after leaving Curve's nightclub, which is possible, but there's no known reason why he would be just standing there, because let's remember he left at 2 a.m. and the fight broke out at 3 a.m. So it seems that it would make a lot of sense that he was involved because he probably was already somewhere else. While it could be possible that he went somewhere else for another drink, police were able to meticulously trace Derek's movements prior to his death due to his distinctive appearance. If this was the case, so if this was the case, it seems likely that someone would have reported seeing him elsewhere.
What did they mean by distinctive appearance?
Okay, so he apparently had a very black beard. This is him.
Kind of looks like Abraham Lincoln.
He looked like an Abraham Lincoln a little bit. I think he had light hair. You can't really see from the black and white picture, but apparently his facial hair was dyed black. He would dye his facial hair black, so they were able to kind of he does look like someone that you would see him and you would remember.
That's true.
He looks like a very
light-haired man with black beard, easy to spot, easy to remember.
Right? So the red Jaguar was traced, but the owner was nowhere near Bristol at the time, although it has been reported that the car was registered to Derek's hometown of Hitchin, some 150 miles away from Bristol. That's bizarre. Hitchin is a very small town in the middle of just a very regular town among hundreds of very similar little towns in the UK.
Well, that's a pretty weird coincidence.
That's a super weird coincidence, don't you think?
It is, definitely.
It is never specified why the witnesses regarded the Jaguar as suspicious, although the car's owner was cleared. If Derek was followed by someone from his hometown, all the way from Hitchin, Why did they pick such an unusual murder weapon? The police seem fairly confident this was just a robbery that got out of hand, but if that's the case, it's a very strange coincidence that a distinctive and suspicious vehicle in the area happens to be registered to Derek's relatively small hometown, a considerable distance away. The car is just another strange factor in a case full of unanswered questions. Cases listed as active, with regular reviews. However, despite forensic analysis of the traffic cone and a 2009 analysis of tapes lifted from Derek's pockets, no further physical evidence has been found. There are no suspects, no EFITs, and sadly no leads in the murder of Derek Grain. Anything is jumping out immediately? What are your thoughts about this one?
I don't know. Like, whoever killed him, once again, it didn't seem planned, because why would they use traffic cone in the first place?
Yeah, I agree that traffic cone, to me, clearly suggests that they didn't have a murder weapon on hand, so they used whatever they could find.
Exactly.
Why do you think Derek was walking in the opposite direction?
Mainly just to probably simply just to take a walk.
Exactly. I actually have to agree with you on this one, because police found it very suspicious and people on Reddit found it very suspicious that Derek took the route towards the park. But then again, Derek was only in the city for 2 months. And a walk in the park for a described man who is described as a loner, I don't see that as strange.
Yeah, me either. If he wasn't walking in towards the park, it would have been suspicious. But he was walking towards the park, so he probably just wanna, I don't know, think about some things, so try to unwind a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But if the robbery was the motive, why do you think the murder was so brutal? Derek was clearly intoxicated and he could have been overpowered easily.
Do you think the killers were present in the bar and maybe Derek interacted with them and they probably thought Derek was arrogant?
I mean, anything could happen.
Yeah.
I never thought about that one. I think that there is a chance that maybe since it was described that he was spending a lot of cash, that someone followed him.
Yeah, someone from the bar followed him, probably got pissed.
Police put a lot of weight on this angle that the killers must have been covered in blood and that it's strange that nobody saw them in the area. But I personally don't think that it's as difficult as the police made it seem. Because it's a kind of secluded park area at night. There's probably not that a lot of people. And let's say it's October, late October, in UK. I think it's jacket wearing time.
Yeah, autumn season.
Yeah, so if your jacket is covered in blood, then you would just take the jacket off. You
and
could
if it's
almost
dark colored, harder to spot.
Yeah, if you're wearing a jacket, you just take the jacket off. And I think that's how you could kind of just walk out of there and not cause any suspicion.
I was more of thinking it was a Halloween night and people were in costumes, but this was the 1980s. I don't know if they were doing it back then.
And it was not even Halloween night.
It wasn't?
It was the 30th, so it was the day before. Like
Eve.
Yeah, the next day would have been Halloween. So, but then again, I wouldn't put that much weight on it. I think you could kind of walk out of there. We've seen a lot of cases where people are killed in the park and the murder stays unsolved because no one sees anything.
Exactly.
I don't think it's that hard.
I mean, if I would see two bloody men on the 30th or the 31st of October, I would literally just brush it off as their Halloween costumes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Especially in a party street.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like somewhere in the outskirts. It's in the party street of Bristol. What do you make of the red car And do you think that the red jaguar who was allegedly spotted in the area, and for some reason an anonymous tipster described it as suspicious, which makes no sense to me? Because if you are reporting a red jaguar as a suspicious vehicle, why are you anonymous? And how is it suspicious? Anyways, do you think it's a coincidence that this particular red jaguar just kind of came up in this case was registered in the relatively small town of Hitchin on the other side of the UK, almost 150 kilometers away?
Yeah, that's the most interesting part. I can't even think of any explanation for that. It's just so bizarre.
It's just so bizarre that car, the red jaguar, it just makes no sense to me. I mean, maybe it's just a coincidence. So to summarize my thoughts about this case is that maybe Derek just wanted to go take a walk in the park and was potentially followed by someone from the bar, and maybe that person tried to mug Derek but ended up killing him violently because he was also
Derek
drunk.
fought back.
Yeah, and then they're all drunk. So
It
things
escalated into something more.
Yeah, then took Derek's money and ran away.
Well, it's 60 pounds. Must have been massive back then.
It's like 300 now.
Euros, dollars.
All the same. So that's what I'm kind of leaning towards. What do you think?
I'm with you on this. Seems to be a robbery, a mugging gone wrong.
We have another murder case, unsolved murder case that is happening on Halloween. This time I want to talk about the murder of Roberta Bobby Miller. Her nickname was Bobby. She was found dead in her home at 123 Country Club, Guilford, New Hampshire, America, on November 1st, so the following day after Halloween, in the year of 2010, by her adult son, Jonathan Miller. Lying in the kitchen was the body of her dog Scout as well, who had also been killed. It was determined that she had died the night before, and that the cause of death was determined to be several shotgun blasts that perforated Roberta's carotid artery, brain, and lungs. There was no murder weapon, and there was no signs of forced entry into the home, so it seems like someone had entered Roberta's home on Halloween night and proceeded to kill her with a shotgun, several blasts, from what I'm assuming, to her head, and then also killing her dog Scout. So the suspect profile would look like this. The killer used a shotgun, which is a loud and powerful weapon, usually is a very messy weapon, leaves a big mess. No signs of forced entry indicate that Roberta probably knew the killer, or that the killer somehow convinced Roberta to let them inside of her house. There were never reports of any evidence of sexual abuse by law enforcement, so we don't know if that was the case at all. There was $26,000 in the home at the time of the murder, but nothing was reported stolen. So it doesn't really seem like the motive was burglary, which is very strange. On Halloween night, someone entered Roberta's home and blasted her and her dog with a shotgun for apparently no reason. The killer also murdered the dog, which means they could have had a deep hatred for the victim potentially, because who kills the dog?
Exactly.
If you kill the dog, that seems that you're kind of doing something on purpose, like you're
acting out of anger.
Anger, yeah. The dog killing definitely indicates that this is anger involved. Unfortunately, this case is still unsolved until this day. The case was almost immediately transferred to major crimes due to the lack of preparation for crimes of this nature. The police have been extremely tight-lipped and haven't released an official statement with new information regarding the case since 2010. So it's been 14 years, almost 14 years, since we had some sort of an update regarding Roberta Miller's murder. Despite being one of the smaller states in the country, New Hampshire is largely unsuccessful when it comes to solving major crimes and disappearances. This is likely due to poorly funded police precincts mixed with the dense wooded terrain, and to blame for New Hampshire's inability to handle major cases. I guess those are the reasons. Roberta Miller's case is still considered open, but at this point it is listed as one of New Hampshire's 100 and plus unsolved murders and disappearances. However, since it is still technically open, police won't release information regarding the case, evidence, or even suspects. Although an unsolved case isn't necessarily rare, it is surprising that the police have not revealed anything since essentially the time of the murder. Since 2007, there have only been 3 recorded homicides in the town where Roberta Miller was living. It's called Meredith, New Hampshire, and in all the crime history of Sandwich, New Hampshire, there has never been a recorded murder. The interesting part about this unsolved case is that we can make some assumptions about who the killer was based on the nature of the crime, but there seems to be a very apparent person of interest here.
Okay.
Gary Miller, Roberta's ex-husband. And I will explain why. Gary and Roberta Miller got married in 1981. So they've been married for almost 25 plus years at the time of their divorce. So they had a very long marriage.
Oh yeah, definitely. They had a
Gary,
long run.
Exactly. So Gary ran a successful car dealership in Wolfboro, New Hampshire, another Ford dealership in Sandford, Maine, as well as a tire company based off Danworth, New Hampshire. So it seemed like Gary was a pretty successful businessman.
It seems pretty busy as well.
Yeah, indeed. 3 different companies.
Going to 3 different locations.
Yeah, probably a very busy boy. The couple lived in Wolfboro for many years, and they had 2 children who were grown at the time of the murder. On September 19th, 2007, the couple filed for a divorce after 26 years of being together. The divorce proceedings were long and complicated, and according to some sources, it was an extremely unhappy process for both parties. This is likely due to Gary Miller having a lot of different assets and like agreeing how they're gonna split Gary's stuff. The divorce proceedings finally ended in August of 2010, 3 months before the murder of Roberta. Now, strange things started happening leading up to her murder. For example, on October 28th, 2010, a man in Acton, Maine, reported a large house fire. The house on fire was a large cabin that belonged to Gary Miller. This is 3 days before Roberta was killed. Gary's house burned down.
I don't get it. Do you think Bobby started the fire?
No. I'm thinking of a different angle.
Okay.
I'll explain. The flames appeared to be somewhat sandy colored. Then the house burned to a skeleton extremely fast, like immediately. There was no salvageable anything. The Acton Fire Chief Department determined that the house was intentionally set ablaze, ruling it an arson. So someone set it on fire. No one has ever been arrested in connection with the fire that burned the lakeside home of Gary Miller just 3 days before his ex-wife's murder. And why I think this is suspicious, because Gary apparently had money problems at this time, especially after the legal proceedings, etc. Like there was some tax that has not been paid for his businesses, etc. And the main theory here is that he himself set the house on fire.
How come?
To collect insurance money on the house.
That makes sense.
And use the money to pay off any of the financial burdens that he had at that time. Now let's talk about their messy divorce a little bit. The couple filed for divorce in 2007 and cited irreconcilable differences, which could possibly indicate an affair of some sort took place. Over the course of the divorce proceedings, Gary Miller had to sell all of his successful companies in order to pay restitution and alimony to Roberta Miller. Gary had to liquidate his assets and give almost half of his money to Roberta, his now ex-wife, and in total, Roberta received over $900,000. In 2009, Gary Miller took Roberta Miller to court to argue that she hadn't paid $74,000 in taxes owed to him as part of their, divorce settlement. At that time, Roberta had no job and claimed that she had ran out of money and couldn't pay him that $74,000. However, records showed that Roberta had spent around $100,000 on legal fees and another $110,000 on personal taxes. That would leave a little over $700,000 unaccounted for, despite her claims. So Gary Miller had gone from a successful married businessman with assets worth over $1.3 million to a single man with nothing going for him. And he ordered to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to his ex-wife, and then the ex-wife claims that she doesn't even have that money when it was her time to pay something on her side.
Yeah.
So you could see how Gary Miller could be like very angry and bitter towards his ex-wife. It doesn't take a genius here to make that connection.
Yeah, I'm just surprised at how huge the personal taxes of Bobby was. $110,000. Jeez.
It's America. Police have never ruled Gary Miller out as a suspect or ruled him in as a suspect. One of the most common motives for murder, no matter where you look, is money. Gary Miller could have had a significant motive to end his ex-wife's, Roberta Miller's, life. He was likely still the beneficiary for any life insurance money that would come from her death. And who knows what Gary Miller's financial status could have been after the long and convoluted divorce proceedings. Crime scene evidence points to a personal attack performed by someone who would have known the victim well enough to get through the door. Gary Miller unfortunately fits the suspect's profile to a T. Gary Miller would have lived about 35 minutes away from his ex-wife at that time. Additionally, since Roberta was murdered on Halloween night, a figure walking around with a mask and a gun likely wouldn't have turned too many heads. Makes sense, right? Some of Roberta's friends reported that she was acting fearful for her life prior to her untimely death. Roberta Miller's son, Jonathan Miller, reported that she had given him and his sister a letter detailing what to do if she ever died. So it almost seems like she was paranoid that something will happen to her soon. Finally, there are still so many questions involving Gary Miller. Could Gary Miller have set his own house on fire in order to collect insurance money? I think it's likely. If so, why kill Roberta for presumably more insurance money? Was the insurance payout put on hold until they divorced? Who had committed the arson? The more questions I get answered about Roberta, the more questions I have about Gary Miller. Oh, naturally, right? Okay, so it seems like this case is going one way.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Why shoot Bobby and the dog?
Well, maybe the dog would have attacked him.
No, I meant if he was after the insurance money, wouldn't it have been more convincing to, I don't know, burn the whole house down? Along with Bobby and the dog.
I mean, maybe that house didn't have any insurance money, because I feel like that house was just a new house that Roberta had moved in, and I don't think that he would be the recipient of the insurance.
Oh, okay, got it.
Maybe
so it had to be murder.
Maybe to kind of make it easier to kind of pay some sort, like maybe financial, or maybe he was really bitter.
Yeah. And you mentioned Bobby was paranoid at one point and even wrote letters to her children. Did she mention anything about it? Like, why was she paranoid? And did she think Gary, the ex-husband, would have killed her eventually?
I don't think there was any information like that. Like why exactly she was paranoid. But I think we could kind of
guess it
here. That maybe she was a little bit frightened by Gary.
I mean, it would have been easier if she just told her kids.
Yeah.
Right?
So, do you think that... Okay, so do you think that this is Gary Miller? Where do you think? Do you think it's a stranger who just went into her house, murdered her in cold blood alongside with the dog, didn't steal anything and just left? Or do you think it's Gary Miller whose house burned down just 3 days ago and it was a arson attempt? And I don't know, I just kind of think that as an outsider, to me this just screams Gary Miller is involved.
Yeah, because
like
imagine
Gary.
One day you're a millionaire, you have $1 million or more, and then all of a sudden you had nothing.
You had nothing. Yeah. You know, I do think what the kids are thinking. What do you think the kids are thinking? Because they have 2 children.
It's probably a lot of confusion. I feel bad for them.
Do you think they suspect the father, or do you think that the kids think it's a random person who walked in and just murdered what seems to be a regular woman who didn't seem like she was doing anything specific that would...
I mean, that divorce was really messy.
Yeah. She was unemployed, and apparently she was taking online classes. She was in college. She was 54.
I mean, that's good for her. Maybe she wanted to apply for a real job.
Maybe someone knew that she had a lot of money from that legal battle. So...
But the money was not stolen, right?
The money was not stolen. There was $26,000 inside of the house. It's never reported whether or not it was in the open or not. Maybe it was hidden.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe it wasn't.
I mean, was there any information if the house was ransacked?
I don't know. I don't think there was any info actually about the house being ransacked or not.
Because if it was, then it's a whole different story.
Yeah, that is true. If it was ransacked, then maybe it looks more like a robbery.
Yeah.
Potential robbery. But I don't really know. This one is very suspicious to me, and I'm suspecting Gary Miller's involvement in this one.
Yeah, me too.